But let's go back to the language of gnosis and your description of your meditation experiences and the terms piiti, bliss, sukha, joy, and I translate jhana as ecstasy. Okay. And you were suggesting that ecstasy didn't seem to you to be the correct interpretation. You know, for you, ecstasy is some kind of external, effusive kind of, or how, what would you? Why don't you?
Well, just it's more like joy, whereas joyful and ecstatic seem to go together for me. But in my experience, you pass beyond that, and it's better. It's more blissful, but it's not joyful anymore. And it's difficult to explain, but the sense of like joy is not there because the mind is so still that joy is more of an active thing in a subtle way than what is beyond that. Of course, it's hard to make sense of it all in words, but right, so it begins as like incredible joy, but then soon it becomes your mind, right, it kind of like sheds the joy is how it feels like, or it becomes more still and blissful, but in a more profound way, right, more tranquil. So I think that's why I think the descriptions of the second jhana, that's why I feel that the standard way people say that that joy fades away, that was my experience. There's something better than joy, and that's why I brought up the Catherine's, whatever her name is, Catherine's thing, because it's, it sounds like stupid when you say it, but it really is like more joyful than joy.
Well, let's look at it this way. Are you willing to consider that very few people have ever experienced spiritual ecstasy?
Very few people in the history of the world?
At any given time in history. And at any particular juncture in time.
So like how many people living right now have experienced spiritual ecstasy? Very few. I would say probably.
Okay, so my point that I'm moving to is that perhaps the dictionary editors for the English language really don't understand certain terms. Like, for instance, a classic example would be we call a charming religious leader who misleads people, we call him charismatic, right? Okay. But if we look at the original use of the term charismatic, it had nothing to do with being charming. It had nothing to do with controlling a lot of individuals. It had to do with an individual who manifested the charisms. And the charisms were ecstatic, altered states of consciousness, out-of-body experiences, seeing auras, seeing chakras, and that kind of stuff, right, in a Christian context. Now, they didn't use the term chakra and aura, but when you look at the paintings, of Christian iconography, every saint has got an aura, That's an aura, folks. They have stuff going on in discrete parts of their body, like the heart is open, and we see this radiating light. Well, what is that? That's the heart chakra, isn't it? Okay. So I think what we have to begin with by saying is that, only a mystic is going to understand these experiences. And the people who edit dictionaries are almost never mystics. The people who translate religious literature are almost never mystics. In most cases, they're just intellectuals trying to figure it out. But to me, you can't figure it out. It's not an intellectual process. It's something you have to experience, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree totally. Okay. It's like seeing color or tasting food, right? Unless, you can...
It's hard to describe curry if you've never had curry.
Anything.
Right.
An apple, if you've never had a fruit, and I tried to explain what it was, right? It'd be worthless.
Right. Okay. So, so we mystics are trying to express ourselves in the English language. We're trying to express ourselves by referring to previous mystics, and we have a lot of debate in the Buddhist community about, well, is joy present or not? Is the experience of jhana ecstatic? Is it blissful? Is being ecstatic the equivalent of going to a football game and jumping up and down, and yelling and screaming like an idiot because somebody made a touchdown? To me, that's not ecstasy at all. That's effusive group hysteria.
We have different uses for it, like sukha, right? That
Exactly.
they had in Pali.
Exactly, right. And to me, that's not ecstasy at all.
Right. But I think the most accurate usage, and it's common in English, is we use it to describe like a very pleasurable sexual orgasm.
Exactly, and to me, it's a complete misuse of the term.
But I think it's good, because in my experience, that's what the beginning stages are like. It's kind of like that, but only like many times more pleasurable and profound.
Okay.
So, but it's not. But that's why I'm saying, like, the ecstatic stage to me is something more like an orgasmic. It's like, orgasmic, but it's like a soul orgasm.
But if we read Teresa of Avila
Uh-huh.
and the other Christian mystics, they're describing various stages of ecstasy. Ecstasy is the term that they use to describe the whole religious experience. Teresa of Avila describes 7 stages of ecstasy in her book Interior Castle. So, to me, we need to look at the mystics, not look at the football players, the people who watch football, right? The people who watch football are not mystics. Or, maybe some mystics watch football.
Possible.
It's not, but most of the people who are watching football and getting excited about it probably are not mystics.
Probably not.
Right. So where I'm going is let's say piiti, right? I think it's best translated as bliss. Now, what is bliss? To me, bliss is just a pleasurable experience within a religious context or spiritual context. That's all. It's just spiritual pleasure. Like we have many terms for pleasure, right? Like if you gain pleasure out of food, then we will call that a gustatory pleasure or something, right? And sexual pleasure is eroticism. It's erotic pleasure, right? So, to me, bliss is the correct term for a pleasurable or pleasant experience in a spiritual context, which is, in other words, the ecstasies. The reason why they're ecstasies is because they're pleasurable.
They are definitely pleasurable, I agree.
Okay, and so that pleasure, the term for pleasure that we're going to use is bliss. The ecstasies are ecstasies because they're blissful.